Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a normal Pendulum deck profile. So I'm really excited for this guys because this deck is a super special deck because I actually got this deck as a present from Izzy. So there's a really amazing story behind this deck. So I actually went to the DarkArmedDuelist PO box. If you guys would like to send anything into the DarkArmedDuelist PO box, it is down in the description down below for all the details about that. And when I got to the DarkArmedDuelist PO box, there was a very large box in the PO box. So I took it out to the car and it was addressed from Izzy. So when I looked at the box, I popped it open and I actually found an amazing deck box inside of it filled with this particular deck that had a complete extra deck, a complete side deck, and a complete main deck, which is just absolutely insane that Izzy would actually send me this normal Pendulum deck. So I wanted to profile it on this channel because I wanted to immortalize it and actually just say thank you so much, Izzy, for sending me this deck. This is probably one of the most thoughtful gifts I've ever gotten ever, and I really love this deck. I'm going to keep it just like this, but I wanted to profile it on the channel just to say thank you and say, hey, I really appreciate you as a person, and I really appreciate you sending me this deck. Thank you for being such a great friend and an awesome person. So without further ado, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description in a single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, and even getting your requested deck profile every single month your Patreon along with test hand. And let's get straight on in to this awesome, super special deck profile. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Dragoons of Draconia. This card is a great card in this particular deck. I love this card because what this card does is all of your monsters in the main deck don't have monster effects. They only have pendulum effects, so we're only going to be going over those. So this card is a scale 2 that has the ability that once per turn, if a normal monster you control destroys an opponent's monster by battle, after damage calculation, you can add 1 level 4 or higher normal monster from your deck to your hand, which is really helpful for this deck because you have so many high level monsters that you can actually search with this deck, and you can grab the exact scale that you need with this card. We then play 3 copies of Sea Dragoons of Draconia. This card is a great card as a 3-of in here because when this card, or when a monster is destroyed by battle, then you can special summon a normal monster from your hand, which is pretty good to be able to just immediately special summon another monster. We then play 3 copies of Sky Dragoons of Draconia, which is my favorite of all of the Dragoons in this particular deck, and it has the ability that once per turn, when a normal monster that you control inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can target a card on the field and destroy it, which is great to just be able to pop a card on the field. We then play 2 copies of Land in this deck because this card does piercing damage and it lets all of your monsters do piercing damage, because if a normal monster you control attacks, you get to inflict piercing, which is a really good effect. We then play 3 copies of Flash Knight. Flash Knight has no pendulum effect and has no monster effect, so this card is just basically a vanilla that's a scale 7, which is pretty helpful for the deck to actually have that scale 7, but he's also a level 4, which helps out the deck a lot. We then play 3 copies of Mendragon. This card is a pretty good scale 2, but it also does not have any effects at all. But it's still pretty good because it has 2,500 attack points on a level 5 monster, which is a great pendulum summon to your side of the field because it is a scale 2, and it helps balance out the scales in this deck. We then play 2 copies of Magica Libra, who, speaking of scales, which is a really good card in this deck because it's actually a tuner monster in this particular deck. So it's helpful to be able to use this card to go into synchro plays, but it's a really good card because it has the ability that you can declare a level from 1 to 6 and then target 2 monsters you control, and until the end of the turn, reduce the level of one of those monsters by the declared amount, and if you do, increase the other monster by the amount, which is pretty good to be able to basically level manipulate your monsters to go into some really powerful synchro monsters. We then play 3 copies of Hollow Hollow. Hollow Hollow is a good card in the deck as well because it's actually a great needle fiber target and has a really neat pendulum scale effect that once per turn you can target a monster on the field and roll a 6-sided die, and that monster's level becomes the same as the result until the end of the turn, which is a great effect to be able to level manipulate your monsters. We then play 2 copies of Rizebel the Summoner. Rizebel the Summoner has the pendulum effect of once per turn, target 1 face-up monster monster on the field and increases its level by 1 even if this card leaves the field, which is a pretty good effect to, again, level manipulate your monsters into the exact level that you want them to be. So that's it for the monsters. I think it's a pretty good monster lineup. I really like it. I think it's really balanced with the pendulum scales, and it helps out the deck a lot to always have your pendulum scales balanced. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Upstart Golem to make it a 39 card deck. To make it a 38 card deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of One Day of Peace, which is really helpful, especially while you're trying to establish your plays to play this card as a 1-of. 2 copies of Flawless Perfection of the Tenyi. All non-effect monsters on the field are unaffected by any effect monster's effect, which is a great effect because it basically makes them all immune, which is a great effect for this deck to be able to have as a blanket ability. It also has the ability that once per turn, if your opponent special summons any effect monsters while you control a face down monster or a non-effect monster, you get to draw 2 cards, which is a great card because this card is very easily a +1 if your opponent summons a monster. We then play 3 copies of Summoner's Art because it lets us add any of our level 5 monsters from our deck to our hand, which is a great effect to be able to add any of those scales that we need to be able to establish our boards. 3 copies of Painful Decision, which is a great effect as well because it lets us send a level 4 or lower normal monster from the deck to the graveyard, and then we get to add a monster with the same name as that card from our deck to our hand, which helps out the deck a lot to be able to grab, again, the scales that you need from your deck to your hand. We then play 3 copies of Unexpected Die to round out the spells because this card lets us special summon out any of our level 4 or lower normal monsters from the deck as long as we don't control another monster, which helps out a lot in this deck to be able to give you that first special summon or to bait out an Ash Blossom. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing just 3 trap cards in this build, and we're playing 3 copies of Fists of the Unrivaled Tenyi. This card is an insanely powerful counter trap, and I love this card in this deck. That when a spell or trap is activated, or when a monster effect is activated while you control a face-up non-effect monster, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card, which is a really good effect to be able to just negate the effect. And if this set card you control is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, then you get to special summon 1 non-effect monster from your extra deck. And you might be thinking, well, what non-effect monster are we actually going to summon? Well, let me show you. We're actually going to summon out Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. Yeah, we summon out the OG Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon off this card effect if it does get destroyed. That is insane that you can just immediately throw out a Blue Eyes Ultimate with this card. So that's just a really cool card effect. So that's it for the traps, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're playing a single copy of Draco Masters of the Tenyi because it has great link arrows and it combos extremely well with our normal Pendulum monsters because it can't be destroyed by battle with an effect monster, and if you control no other effect monsters, you can destroy effect monsters that your opponent controls equal to the number of normal monsters that you currently control or in your graveyard, which is a pretty good effect to be able to just pop a bunch of monsters on your opponent's side of the field. Play a single copy of Unchained Abomination because this card can pop up to 3 cards per turn, which is a really good effect. 1 copy of Appaloosa. Appaloosa is a great card as well because of those link arrows and being able to give you those additional negations. And playing so many different names in this deck is very easy to actually summon. 1 copy of Needle Fiber. Needle Fiber is really good to summon so you can summon out your copy of your Hollow from the deck. 1 copy of Land. This card is also a really good card because it is a normal monster, so it ties in a lot with this deck to be able to summon this card, especially for those link arrows. 1 copy of Link Spider. This card is really good in this deck because you basically link summon it using any normal monster, and then you can special summon any normal monster that you want from your hand that's level 4 or lower. 1 copy of Imduk as well. Imduk is a really neat card because it's a good 1-of because you can link summon this card using any normal monster to summon this card, and so it helps out a lot in the deck to be able to link summon into this card if you do need an effect monster on the field. We then play a single copy of Leo, the Keeper of the Sacred Tree, because it's a good level 10 synchro monster. 1 copy of Virtual World QB because it's a walking macrocosmos. Draco Berserkers of the Tenyi because all the Tenyi cards pretty much work really well with this deck, and it's a really good boss monster because when your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can banish it, and if this card, or if this attack card, or if this attacking card destroys an effect monster of battle and sends it to the graveyard, this card gains attack equal to the destroyed monster's attack. So this card can get really big, but it doesn't stop there. This card can also make a second attack on a monster during that battle phase, which is pretty good, just that it gets the boost and they can attack again. 1 copy of Borreload Savage because it's a great boss monster that can give you additional negates. Cyber's Quantum Dragon. This card is really good because it has the ability that when this card, while you control a link monster, monsters your opponent controls cannot target monsters you control for attacks except this card. Also, your opponent cannot target monsters you control with card effects except this card. And then once per turn, at the start of the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's monster, you can return that opponent's monster to the hand, and also this card can make a second attack in a row. That's a really good effect to be able to just attack again and be basically a compulse. We then play a single copy of Muddy Mud Dragon because you can use this card as a fusion material, which is pretty good. And has the ability this card can be substituted for any one fusion monster, which is pretty good. And also has the ability you can fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters that you control as fusion material, including this card. So it's basically a walking poly. One copy of Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon because this card can be summoned off your copies of Fist of the Unrivaled Tenyi if it gets destroyed by a card effect, which is a great effect. And then a single copy of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon because you can actually make it in a really fun way with a copy of Muddy Mud Dragon to be able to fusion summon into that card by synchroing into this card and then using it as a fusion material with any other Dark Dragon, which is really actually quite easy in this deck to establish. So that's it for the extra deck. Let's actually get into the side deck and show you guys what's in the side deck for this deck. So we're playing 3 copies of Heatwave. Heatwave is a great side card because this card has the ability, this card can only be activated at the start of the main phase 1, and neither player can normal or special summon an effect monster until the end of the next draw phase, which is a really good effect because it basically turns your opponent's entire turn off. 3 copies of Natural Tune. Natural Tune is kind of a neat card because it lets you select one level 4 lower normal monster that you control, and it's treated as a tuner monster while it's faceable in the field, which is pretty good because it gives you additional tuners in the deck. 3 copies of There Can Only Be One. This card is hilarious in this deck because it can totally shut down an opponent's entire turn, which is why we're playing this card as a 3 of, because basically it makes it so your opponent can only control one type of monster, each player can only control one monster of each type, and we play so many different types in this deck that this card just works so well. We then play 3 copies of Pendulum Switch. Pendulum Switch has the ability to target one card in your Pendulum zone, special summon it, and then target a Pendulum monster in your monster zone and place it in your Pendulum zone, so it lets you tag out to get the exact scale that you need. 1 copy of Skill Drain because we don't have any monster effects in the main deck, so this card really hurts the opponent a lot more than it hurts us. And 2 copies of Full Cast Cannon. This card is a neat card to side into the deck because it has the ability that once per turn during the end phase, if this card was activated this turn, you can target one face-up spell or trap card on the field and destroy it. But not all decks play back row, so this card is a great side card. So that's it for the deck, guys. I really am, I can't believe it still that Izzy actually sent me this. This deck is just really fun. It's really amazing that he actually sent this because Normal Pendulum is actually his signature deck, that every time I duel him, he actually pulls out Normal Pendulum at some point or another. So it's just really amazing to me that he would actually send me this. It's really just crazy. I'm so glad that he did because it's such a fun deck to play around with, and I'm really glad that I was able to profile it for you guys to immortalize this deck on the channel. And really, really awesome shout out to Izzy for actually sending me this deck because it is just incredible. It's seriously one of the most thoughtful gifts anyone has ever given me, and I really appreciate you as a person, Izzy. Thank you so much for sending me this, guys. So anyways, guys, definitely give Izzy some love down in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.